Welcome to Combat Zone with Ben the Bane Davis on Stadium.
Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. I'm your host, Ben the Bane Davis. Today's episode is a stacked one. We've got top 10 Oktagon lightweight Denis the Menace Frimpong joining the booth, fresh off of his 5th consecutive victory in a row. And we've got some very deep topics to uncover. Vanderlei Silva getting knocked out cold in a random boxing match in Brazil, as well as some interesting updates on Zuffa Boxing's streaming home. But before we get to all that, got to tell you a little bit about the weekend, right? What have I been up to? The answer, not much. Really taking a bit of a relaxing backseat in State 48, which I can't complain about too frequently, right? You got to take some time to R&R before you can really hit the road strong. All right. Let's take it to some UFC Perth reactions. So before we get into any of the fights themselves, right, Carlos Ulberg and Dominic Reyes headlining this action, I want to talk about the fights we didn't get to see. This event originally had 17 bouts booked, and over the course of weeks, couple months, it was kind of whittled down to 12. Not by, serious fault on anybody, injuries here, a couple withdrawals there. But to go through the list of what we lost, originally it was Tom Nolan and Evan Elder. Then Evan Elder steps out. Charlie the Cannibal Campbell steps in. Justin Tafa versus Louis Sutherland, as well as Junior Tafa and Ivo Aslan off the card, losing both of the Tafa brothers. Duho Choi and Daniel Santos also was a fight that fell through. And lastly, John Mikulev and Oban Elliott, which was lost 7 days out from the event, which seriously sucks because Oban is a exciting welterweight, has a great fan base, and a fun personality that you always want to showcase because he's electric, right? He's magnetic, and I think he has a bright future. So losing the opportunity to feature that is just sad all around. And again, anytime you have an event where you're losing fights and it's kind of becoming smaller and smaller in scope and it feels like the hype is dying, even if some of these bouts aren't exactly important or huge fights that fans are clamoring to see, it still does impact, I would say, the vision of the event. If every other update is, yep, we've lost another fight. Yep, we lost another fight. There's one more fight that we've lost. It just doesn't, it just doesn't feel great. That being said, though, the event itself, as it transpired, was a decently okay one. I'm not going to say a good one. I'm not going to say a great one, but it was okay. It had some good finishes. A couple of the usual suspects of getting finished. Andre Petroski got TKO'd by, I got to say, some of the lightest looking left hooks I've ever seen, right? 2 touches on the side of the dome. Petroski goes down, a little bit of ground and pound, and that was all she wrote. Kind of reminded me of the time he was KO'd by Jacob Malkoun's hip. If you remember that clip, basically Andre runs in, hits his dome on Malkoun's left side, and KO'd himself. I just don't understand this guy's durability. It seems like it fluctuates fight to fight, and after a showing like this, getting KO'd by Cam Rouston quite easily, I feel like we're okay on Petroski. No disrespect, but I feel like at the UFC level, we are okay without having him on the roster, right? I'd like a roster full of, competent, well-rounded, competitive fighters. And I don't know if Andre Petroski necessarily fits, right, given the performances over the past 6-7 fights. Talking about the prelims, Navajo Sterling gets a lackluster decision in a featured spot. So listen, I have heard nothing but good things about Navajo Sterling. He had so much hype coming out to Contender Series, so much hype coming into his debut, and so much hype in this featured spot, right? You're headlining the prelims in Perth. This is a big opportunity. And against Rodolfo Bellato, who, respectfully is not the highest of IQ players at 205, right? If you remember Bellato and Craig, Rodolfo eats an up kick and then pretends that he's seeing ghosts and acting as if there is a poltergeist inside the octagon, right? So I don't know. It seemed like an easy layup for Navajo Sterling, but we go the full 15 minutes. Don't think that there was anything necessarily special or spectacular. But look, Navajo's 8-0 overall. He's still 27 years young. So in terms of development and ceiling, I think there's potential. And at 205, I mean, geez, Louise, we need some bodies. We need some fresh contenders. So I think Navajo Sterling will find a home at light heavyweight. But I just have to say, I'm not exactly rushing to go watch another Sterling performance. All right, let's take it to the main card. Kicks off with, I gotta say, gang, I have to say this. I've been watching the UFC since 2017, quite regularly. This might be the biggest officiating error I've ever seen. Might be the worst refereeing instance I've ever witnessed. So Jake Matthews and Neil Magny. Jake Matthews has a guillotine at the end of round number 1. Mounted guillotine. Looks like it's wraps almost, right? And Neil is trying to gut it out. Time's running out. But the referee steps in, separates with 2 seconds to go in round number 1. Calls the fight off. And then decides, oopsies, I actually don't want to do that. And the action resumes. We head into the second frame. And then late in the third round, Neil Magny submits Jake Matthews, gets a Darce choke on the Celtic Kid. Jake can't flatten his back to the canvas and has to tap out. Gosh, the adrenaline dump of winning by submission to losing by submission. I think he's the first fighter to win a UFC fight and then lose a UFC fight in the same 15-minute sequence, which is impressive in some ways, but also deeply, deeply frustrating at others, because with how this works financially, half of Jake Matthews' money is gone. Half of it's gone because of Jim Perdios, the UFC referee in that fight, up. I'm sorry, this isn't small consequences. That's career progression. That's money that's now stolen from Jake Matthews' pocket. And, I don't want to say that Jim is a deeply inexperienced guy, but he's only refereed 68 MMA bouts in total. He's only refereed 68 bouts total. That's not even UFC bouts specifically. That's just MMA, period. And when you think about how there's a lot of regional MMA cards that will stack 18, 19, 20 fights on a card, this really could be something recent and new for Jim Perdios, right? That's like 3 or 4 regional cards and slop that he's operated on. And now he's at the UFC level screwing up. So I'm sorry that I have a higher ceiling and I ask more of UFC officials, but golly, you with that, the stakes on the line here and how much money these fighters stand to win or lose, you want people that know what they're doing. And I'm sorry, no disrespect, maybe Jim, this was an errant maneuver, and I don't want to judge you on one single decision in your life, but you f***ed up royally. And I cannot, in good conscience, recommend that you be employed by the UFC any longer, unless you go through some serious officiating courses and actually learn what to do in these instances. So tough night for Jake Matthews. But if there is a positive, it's that the Haitian sensation continues in big 2025. Neil Magny getting it done. Interesting. All right, let's quickly take it to the main event, the title run collapse of Dominic Reyes, right? 4-fight losing streak that was kicked off by his decision defeat to John Jones. That's where his undefeated record came to a close many years back, and seemed like he just fell off the mountaintop, a slippery slope down to the base, and almost was done overall, right? Maybe we were talking about Dom Reyes retiring on a 4-fight losing streak, couple of them finishes, but to his credit, Dom Reyes built himself back. 3-fight win streak, getting some stoppages. Very, very impressive, the resilience that Dom Reyes displayed to get to this potential title eliminator. Now, that being said, the most confusing footwork of all time, 4.5 minutes into the first round. Just waddles into the pocket, unprotected, not throwing any significant offense, just like walks in, eats a 2-1, a cross jab combo, goes down, and that's it. And that was it. And I'm just like, what? Dom, what are we doing here? Right? I will say Dom Reyes only landed 5 strikes through 4.5 minutes. Carlos landed 11 strikes in 4.5 minutes. So not exactly a firefight, not exactly an electrifying main event, not exactly something that is action-oriented, right? But either way, 9-fight win streak for Black Jag. Very, very impressive how Carlos Ulberg has rebuilt himself following a unsuccessful UFC debut, lost to Kennedy in Nzechukwu, And I thought, okay, overhyped city kickboxing prospect. I thought that's what we were going with. And he has made me eat the words by building himself back, showing the resilience that Dom Reyes had, and now is in a great position, right, for a potential title eliminator. What could be next, though? I think Carlos Ulberg should take on the loser of Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev, right? Whoever loses that fight, that should be next for Carlos. I'm looking at the rankings, and I just feel that at 205, Yuri Prohaska and Khalil Roundtree is probably, that's going to produce a title contender. Whereas Ulberg and Jamal Hill, that's something that I would not, or excuse me, Ulberg and the loser of that matchup works for me. And then Prohaska, Khalil winner can take on the winner of that matchup. Now, what could be next for Dom Reyes? The aforementioned Jamal Hill. I think both are in odd career stanzas. We haven't seen them compete against one another. They're both 6 and 7, I think, in the rankings. Give me Dom Reyes and Jamal Hill. All right, lastly, before we take it to Oktagon MMA's Denis Frimpong, I want to touch briefly on the ticket sales, right? Because it's important to also think about the other sides of the UFC and the business side, most importantly, as that's kind of making so many of the decisions these days. So there was a question asked of UFC's Dave Shaw during fight week that, hey, with all of these fights falling off the card, 17 fights down to 12, is that impacting the potential Perth turnout? Is that reducing the ticket sales? Dave said that's not an issue for this event. Dismissed it, said we're not worried about that. It doesn't matter, right? Now, they reported 12,543 in the attendance category and a gate of $1.8 million. It's good. It's good. That being said, though, UFC 305, which was in the same building, drew 14,152 in the attendance category and a gate of $5.4 million. So, nearly 4 times the gate and several thousand more attendees. I get that it's a UFC pay-per-view, and you had Dricus du Plessis, Israel Adesanya, a lot going on. I'm not at all discounting that, but it is interesting to me that the gate falls by a serious magnitude in this equation. Yet when asked, they brush it off. It's not an issue. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. I'm not saying otherwise, right? Because again, the site fees that they're getting for UFC Perth completely wash away anything attendance or gate related. It almost doesn't matter. It's a rounding error for them, right? But it's just interesting to see that reduction from UFC 305 to UFC Perth. All right. Either way, doesn't matter. Fun event overall. Great win by Carlos Ulberg. And talking about great wins, it's time we take it to a man who just put himself back into the win column, making it 5 in a row at Oktagon Mixed Martial Arts. He is the polarizing Irishman, Denis the Menace Frimpong. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining us in the Combat Zone booth. He was just victorious at Oktagon 76, extending the streak to 6 in a row. It's none other than Denis the Menace Frimpong. Denis, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Yeah, healing up well. Still riding that wave of euphoria, I suppose, that you get from winning an MMA contest.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, the initial high definitely settles off after a day or so, but still riding that wave, still enjoying my food. But I'm hungry to get right back in there in the mix. I've had an active year. I want to keep it going. So
Let's talk about this frequency. After that fight with George in 2023, you have just hit another gear. Walk me through this bout with Peter, right? Third round stoppage. Did it go per your expectations?
I mean, if anyone's watched any of the build up, any of the lead up, any of the interviews I've done in the lead up to the fight, I did predict and I did say exactly how the fight would go. I knew that he would come out strong in the first round. I knew that using my elite level cardio and conditioning, I would wear him down. I would drag him into deep waters. And I said end of the second or beginning of the third round. And towards the end of the second round, I could feel him starting to fade.
Mm.
Um, Coming into the third round, I looked across the cage at him and I knew. And I even said to him before we came to the middle, I said, "Oh, you tired, lad?" You didn't say anything back. So I knew at that point that I was going to finish him. My corner said, "Yeah, it's one round apiece. You've got to win this round." And I just said, "Ah, it doesn't matter about the scorecards. I'm going to finish him in this round." So yeah, I knew exactly how the fight would go. Um, I know what I bring to the table. I am not a fast starter. I will be the first to hold my hands up there and say I don't come out blasting it out the gate.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm too intelligent for that. I'm too patient. I'm too high IQ for that. I'm not one of these moronic brawlers that comes out and just starts swinging overhands from their hip. I download information, I take on board that information, and then I use that information against them in the later rounds.
Yeah, well, there's no point to rush out there in the first 10 seconds. We've got 15 or 25 minutes, right? Um, was there, in terms of maybe surprises, right, with how well the game plan worked or anything that Peter offered back, did anything jump out to you on that night in September?
So there was two things that surprised me actually. The first thing was how hard he hit. He actually hit very hard. Um, I've only ever been dropped once before in a fight, or
Mm.
in general. Like I've been buzzed and stuff like that, but I've only ever been dropped twice in my life. I've never been knocked out. Once was against Bo Gavin.
Mm.
Clipped me on the top of the head, dropped me, came back, won the round, beat him on a decision. And then Peter, he did. He kind of caught me after a spin, stepping back, and I just didn't have my wits about me. I didn't have my defenses with me, and he caught me. My foot missed the ground, and yeah, I managed to recover, and I blagged it a bit, I think, with the feint. Um, but I definitely felt rocked. Like my feet were not underneath me. But he obviously couldn't tell because of my feint game being as elite as it is. What also surprised me was actually how who his grappling was. Like I thought he was a good grappler. Like I'd seen him wrestling in a lot of fights, and from what I could see, he had a pretty decent ground game. But when I took it to the ground in the first round, I felt that, and then going into the second round, the way he was lunging in with that overhand, I thought, yeah, it, I'll just take him down. And like I know I'm better than him down there, so I took him down, and it was the first time in my entire pro career that I've shot a takedown in a fight.
Great stuff from our guy, Denis Frimpong. Can't wait to chat with him more throughout today's episode. Still to come, getting into all of the really interesting news of Vanderlei Silva getting KO'd. Don't go anywhere. Up next on Combat Zone. Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. Now, Obama. Big conversation topic for one Dana White. This is making the headlines on Fox News, many other major outlets. A conversation about Dana White and Obama at Trump's inauguration has caught some steam, and I would say for good reason. This is a positive one. So Dana White said, quote, "I'm an American citizen. Biden was my president. Trump is my president. I was at the inauguration. I was sitting behind all the ex-presidents, and there was this stuff going around like Dana's mad dogging President Obama." Then President Obama turns around, the only president that did apparently, and shook Dana's hand and said, "Congratulations on all your success." Dana responds and says, "Thank you very much, Mr. President." And he said, "That's what happened. I never talked about that publicly. If Obama called and said, 'Hey, I'd like to come see a fight,' I would say, he jokingly said, 'Yeah, I'd be like, buy some tickets and good luck.' No," Dana says, "the sitting president or the ex-president wants to come, you treat them with respect." Dana White obviously has been so ingrained in the political landscape of things, being seen at the Republican National Convention, obviously at Trump's inauguration, a big, heavy player in Trump's campaign. But I really do appreciate this partisan effort from him and this statement that everybody is welcome, right? He treats all presidents with respect. And I have, in times been semi-critical of some Dana White stuff, but that is awesome to see. Now, continuing the Dana White conversation, Zuffa Boxing, 12 cards in 2026. All of them will be on Paramount Plus. So Zuffa Boxing, they just had their first event with Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez. What a banger way to start, am I right? And they look to continue that success on Paramount Plus, the home of the UFC next year. Now, obviously, Turki Al Sheikh and Dana are coming together with Nick Khan to get this done. Turkey says that this partnership with Paramount reinforces our vision to redefine the way viewers consume boxing. More fight fans will now have access to watch some of the most exciting boxers around. We've seen the proof that the appetite is there. This is the future for live boxing coverage and will ensure that the sport continues to thrive. Now, remains to be seen if this does result in viewership converts to Paramount Plus subscription sales. But by all accounts, I mean, how can you bet against them? How can you bet against him? 41 million viewers on Canelo Crawford. The biggest names in sports entertainment in Turkey Al Sheikh at the moment, Dana White and Nick Khan behind this this juggernaut of combat sports, content. I have a hard time betting against them. It's almost like when they talk about these mega corporations, right? These conglomerates that are multinational and have hundreds of billions of dollars to their valuations. Too big to fail is the term that you commonly hear. And I feel that now that they're inking a deal with Paramount Plus, now that you have a guy in Turkey Al Sheikh backing it and probably assisting with a lot of the financials, you just can't really fail. And I like the fact that they're only doing 12 cards, right? One a month. All you got to do is one a month. And that to me is a pretty good. If they did like 6 or 8 cards as well in their first year, I'd be like, okay, good. Quality over quantity. 12, same type of thinking. So great to see from Zuffa Boxing. I am really curious to see how this shakes up the boxing landscape and the response from promoters like Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren. These guys, their backs are up against the wall. And they are the other. They are the old. This is the new. And for them to survive, they need to reorganize. They need to adapt. And I don't really see that. To be upfront, to be honest, I have not really seen the type of pivots and moves from the established boxing crews that's going to make them able to survive this new player in the game, right? I'm sorry, but I just see in 5 years' time, there might just be Zuffa Boxing and only Zuffa Boxing. Is that good? Is that bad? We'll see. Lastly, that I want to talk about in today's interesting news segment, before we take it back to our guy, Denis Frimpong, and hear more from him, is some really frustrating news. So Wanderlei Silva was participating in this exhibition boxing match. It was the first time in 7 years that Wanderlei Silva has competed. And it was just a fun boxing match, right? But I will say this. He weighed in 44 pounds heavier than his opponent and was headbutting his opponent, Celino Freitas, multiple times, and even looked at one point like he was throwing a kick. So Wanderlei Silva, right, first time in 7 years he's competing, breaking every rule in the book. Fight gets weighed off. He's disqualified. And then the brawl happens. I'm sure you've seen this video. To Wanderlei's credit, it didn't look like Wanderlei Silva was participating in the brawl to an extreme degree. Almost looked like he was trying to calm things down, trying to be the mediator. Unfortunately for Wanderlei, one of his opponent's sons, Rafael Freitas, walks up to him as he's trying to, stop this brawl and just clocks him. Absolutely clocks him. They had to drag Wanderlei Silva's unconscious body across the boxing ring to provide safety because he was gone, which is just terrible to see, right? And this boxing match in and of itself was a farce and did not need to occur. Wanderlei Silva, he's been KO'd out cold by Vitor Belfort, KO'd cold by Mirko Krokop, KO'd cold by Charles Bennett, KO'd cold by Dan Henderson, KO'd cold by Rampage Jackson, KO'd cold by Chris Lieben, and again, KO'd cold after his last fight. When he was going through the UFC antitrust settlement, that whole process of applying for that settlement money, he was saying that he has traumatic brain injury and has trouble sleeping, trouble breathing, is concerned that he's seeing symptoms of CTE, right? So that money from the settlement, what he said, was going to be really influential to pay for his health care so that he can continue living, right? So then Wanderlei, why the are we boxing in big 2025? If you have all of this, so many concussions from years of fighting and so many brain issues, and you're so concerned about your health, why are we boxing? What are we doing? It's just stupid. I'm sure he got paid a bag for it. I'm sure that there was some big incentive, but listen, if you're gonna go and go on the record, right, legally saying you've got TBI and CTE, and then you go get flatlined by your opponent's son in a stupid boxing match. Listen, the question has to be asked, right? As many brain cells as Vanderlei is clearly losing, is it his IQ that is dropping at the same rate? We must offer up that conversation and see. Jokes aside, though, I hope Vanderlei is okay. He looks destroyed from that boxing match. His eyes completely closed. It's not good. It's not good. So I hope that he finds peace, and I hope that that is the last time we ever see him compete. But I'll tell you what, a guy that I hope we see back very soon inside of competition is none other than Oktagon's own Denis Frimpong, the top 10 lightweight, calling his shots on today's Combat Zone show and giving us some exclusives. Let's take it back to the Oktagon prospect. I believe there is a vision that you have, right? You said you want to get back at it. You want to be active. What does that look like to you moving forward?
Well, I mean, the way I agreed it with Oktagon at the start of this year was that I would have 4 fights this year. I want to stay active. I have a young family to provide for. I've had a kid. You know, Christmas is coming up soon. You know, I haven't had a fight since May, and I like to be active. You know, like I mean, I've only been doing MMA just over 4 years now, just about 4 years, and that was from my amateur debut. I had 8 amateur fights, and this was my 11th pro fight. So whatever that happens to be, 19 fights, you know, in the space of 4 years. I like to be active. So I would like to have another fight this year. Ideally, we're looking at November. That is the fight that's on the table. Gokhan Aksu called me out. He said, if I win this fight against Peter, he wants to fight me. I won the fight. He then called me out on social media and said he wants to fight. His management have said he wants the fight. The fans want that fight. You know, there's been build up to it already. There's been a bit of hype behind it already. He's ranked, I believe, number 6 or 7 in the rankings. You know, the rankings haven't been updated, so I'm ranked number 10. After that win, I should probably jump up to number 9 or 8. So it's a fight to make, I believe. We're both on a win streak. He's on a 4-fight win streak or a 5-fight win streak. I'm on a 6-fight win streak. 5 fights within Oktagon. So I just think it's the fight to make. And the winner of that fight should get a title shot. Now, it is just on Oktagon, the matchmakers, etc., to send me that contract for that fight, send him that contract for that fight, and we can get that fight made in Munich. I know that he sells tickets in Munich. I have family in Munich. I have fans in Munich from having fought there in May. So that is the fight to make, I believe.
When you mention how the fans clearly want this fight, both you and Gokhan's teams want this fight, is Oktagon clued in on this? Do the matchmakers know, okay, this is clearly the direction that we need to go with both these guys?
I mean, they have to know that that's a fight to make. You know? The matchmakers are intelligent. They know what's going on. So they have to know that this is the fight to make, really. This is the next fight to make, and this is the title eliminator fight. We are both on a win streak. We're the only 2 guys in the rankings on as long of win streaks as we are. He's on a 2-fight win streak in Oktagon, 2 finishes. I'm on a 5-fight win streak in Oktagon, 2 finishes. You know, it makes sense. We're on a collision course, right? And yeah, it just makes sense. It's a fight that makes sense. We've had back and forth. I know the fight will sell. You know, we've already had back and forth at the Munich press conference last time. It just makes sense. It just makes sense to me. So yeah, it's at this point, Gokhan has verbally agreed to fight me. Between me and him, I've agreed to fight him. I wanted to see how my body was going to be after the last fight. Obviously, I only fought less than a week ago. My foot was a bit sore. It's now, you know, it's healed up well enough that I'm back training next week. So that'll be an 8-week, 7-week camp. That's enough for me. I've just come out of camp. I'm still healthy. I'm still fit. So, yeah, it makes sense. So at this point, it's on the promotion to send us the contracts. Send him a fight contract. Send me a fight contract for the 22nd of November, and we can get it cracking. And then, that, as I say, that'll be 4 fights for me in the year. I will be very happy. I'll be happy with Oktagon. I'll be happy with the amount of promotion. I'll be happy with the amount of fights, and I'll be right in line for a title shot early next year, I believe. that is my plan anyway. So.
Let's talk about that title shot, because obviously currently vacant at the moment. When you get past Gokhan, who is the name that you want to see opposite you when that championship is hanging in the balance?
I mean, it all depends on how the fight between Richie Smullen and Ivan Buchinger goes.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Richie Smullen is going to beat Ivan Buchinger quite easily. I do, as far as having spoken to Richie Smullen, he's my compatriot. He wants to go back down to featherweight after fighting Ivan Buchinger. That's his natural weight. He wants to go back to featherweight and compete for the belt at featherweight. On the off chance that Ivan wins, I don't believe he will next weekend. But on the off chance he does, then I believe he's going to be the guy in line for the title shot. I would love to fight him, especially if he manages to somehow get past Richie. As I said, I don't 99.99% sure that Richie's going to smoke him. But on that tiny percentage that he does, this is a fight game. I would love to avenge my compatriot and fight Buchinger for that title. I would love to emulate what Conor did to Ivan Buchinger in Cage Warriors all those years ago. He is a legend of the sport. He is a legend of the sport, particularly in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. He's had over 50 bouts. He's got 45, 46 wins, so he has been doing this game a long time, and he is a legend. So I believe I have the skill set to go out there and beat him, and I would like to fight him for the title. But as I said, he probably will get smoked by Richie. He probably won't be fit to fight for a while. So the next logical step will probably be Mateusz Legarski or Max Koga, whichever one wants to come out. Max Koga's on a win, Legarski's on a loss. I don't believe Legarski will get a title shot on the back of a loss over a year ago.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind fighting Max Koga. Either one. Whoever the promotion put in line for the belt. But first, we have to get this bout made, this title eliminator belt made between me and Gokhan Aksu. And if it's not Gokhan Aksu, it can be anyone. Like, you know what I mean? I just want to fight one more time this year. That's all I'm concerned about. And Munich is the ideal candidate. Cologne is a bit too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Munich is in 7-8 weeks, so that's ideal. Prague is like 3 days after Christmas, so I don't want to be cutting weight at Christmas.
Yeah, family man. I mean, you want to spend that holiday time with the family.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, like as long as I get another fight this year, that'll be 4 fights in the year. I would like to fight in Germany again. The Germans seem to love me, and that's where my fan base is growing. And I would like to do it one more time in front of the German fans in 2025. Make it 4-4 in Germany, in Oktagon, in 2025. And yeah, as I said, then there's an undeniable title shot there for me.
Seems like the perfect time, November 22nd, perfect place in Munich, and perfect opponent seemingly in Gokhan. I want to ask, in the near future, if all of these dominoes fall into correct place, you're holding that Oktagon lightweight title. What would that mean to you, given how quickly your MMA career is unfolding?
Well, when I started martial arts, BJJ at the age of like 22, I never really had any aspirations for fighting MMA. I liked MMA. I liked watching MMA, but in my head, I was like, I'm a bit too old maybe to do what I wanted to do. And I focused on jiu-jitsu, and I wanted to become a world champion in jiu-jitsu. COVID happened. The set of circumstances in life and in the world, I suppose, happened where I landed into MMA. I started fighting MMA, and then I realized actually I'm pretty good at this game. I'm pretty hard. I've got good jiu-jitsu now. I've got good striking. I'm built for striking, and why can't I become the best in the world? And it doesn't need to be the UFC. I want to get a world title. Granted, when I started MMA, I didn't know what Oktagon was. I had never heard of Oktagon MMA. As soon as I did, and I saw the kind of stadiums that they were doing, and the kind of shows that they were doing, and the kind of respect that their champions got when they were champions, I said, yeah, this is definitely a place I could be. As soon as I got signed, I was like, this is where I want to be. I want to get that belt and I want to defend that belt as many times as possible. I want to cement my legacy in one promotion. You know, most of my professional fights, I've had 8 professional fights in Oktagon, you know, out of my 11 professional fights. So most of my professional fights are in Oktagon. They gave me the opportunity from when I was very early in my career. You know, I didn't have the best record. I'd lost my pro debut. They gave me an opportunity. I built myself up here. I pulled myself up from grassroots, from the Oktagon Challenge Series, all the way through to fighting my way into the top 10. So I want to complete that mission. I want to then get the belt and I want to defend the belt 8, 9, 10 times, become the longest reigning champion, longest defending, most defenses, selling out arenas, main events on football stadium shows. That is what I want.
So much still to come on today's episode. More from our friend Denis Frimpong. Do not go anywhere here on the Combat Zone. Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. Let's think about polarizing figures, right? Probably the biggest one in mixed martial arts is Conor McGregor, but a kid who's making the name is none other than the guest we have on today's show, Denis Frimpong. Let's take it back to the Menace. I do want to ask about one of the other fights that had occurred on the card, which was, you know, the Neanderthal Frederick getting it done in round 1. But then there was a bit of, I would say, confusion at the press conference. He kind of popped off about how Oktagon was treating him. I was curious, what was maybe the thought behind the stage after that, or did you see that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I didn't see what actually happened. I was in the back, nursing my foot after absolutely dinking my toe off Peter's elbow. But yeah, in my opinion, you know, this guy, he's just come into the promotion a few months ago. He's been signed with 0 striking. He's got good jiu-jitsu. I'll give him that. He's got good jiu-jitsu. You know, he chased the guy around the cage, holding on to his ankle. He went viral as a result, went from 8,000 followers to like 500,000 followers. He pulled out of a fight with an infection a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago. And he now thinks that he's Johnny Big Bollocks and that he can make demands that other fighters can't make. Like, you've had 1 fight on the promotion. You know, you've got 4 professional fights in total. You're not Johnny Big Bollocks. Get yourself in line. You know, like I said, I've had 8 fights with the promotion now. I've built myself up here. I've sold fights. I've come in. I've fought co-main events. I've done big numbers for where I'm at. I might not have gone viral from holding onto someone's ankle, but I've put the work in. As have other fighters. You know, as have other fighters that also have chimed in, the likes of Loz and Keita, like other fighters that have been here, done that, been champ. You know what I mean? And we have to respect the rules at the end of the day. So he doesn't get to come in and start changing the rules just based on the fact that he has 500,000 followers. You know, no one gives a fuck about that if you can't fight. So he's picking opponents. He's not fighting the tough opponents. He wants his girlfriend to come backstage, all this sort of nonsense. And I think he's just being a bit of a drama queen, if I'm being honest. You know, and then from what I heard, he was having a bit of a roid rage episode in the back. So maybe Octagon ought to start bringing in mandatory testing on the day. And seeing if a lot of these guys will still have the same skill set that they have at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of them might look a little deflated. If we get in some USADA or drug testing, they might lose some of that definition. I want to transition a little bit outside of combat sports, right? With your Irish roots and connections, you know, this year has been an interesting one for Conor McGregor. Obviously, he is the biggest combat sports figure from Ireland. He's made this whole hoop and holler about campaigning to be president, which again is largely a symbolic fiat role. I'm just curious, because from my understanding, a lot of people in Ireland don't with him, yet he's still going on about how he wants to represent the people of Ireland and do good. Is there truth in it? Is there validity? What's the truth of Conor in Ireland?
Like, my take on Conor is a bit of a weird one because obviously, like I say, I came from the wave of Conor
Yeah.
Always was a fan of MMA before Connor, Anderson Silva days, Chuck Liddell days, But yeah, obviously never really thought that it was a thing in Ireland until Connor came around. That's
Mm.
what we probably jump into martial arts maybe a bit late. Um, so maybe without him, I wouldn't be doing MMA. But where he's gone and his fall from grace, can't with it. Don't
Yeah.
with it. And a lot of his rhetoric lately has been fueled by like xenophobia,
Yeah.
Islamophobia, and yeah, maybe very questionable views on immigration and on immigrants in general and on Islam. I myself being a revert to Islam. So I don't with it. I don't with his antics, his
Mm.
partying, his dubious criminal activities, we'll say. Despite them not being in a criminal court and being in a civil court, you know, yeah, regardless of whether it was what he said it was, you still got a wife and kids at home and you still went out and
Yeah.
betrayed their trust. So I can't respect a man that does that on a man to man level. But I do respect what he's done for the sport when he was on the come up, when he was hungry, when he was motivated. Do I think he'll ever become president? No. Don't think he has enough support in Ireland. He still has some support in Ireland, don't get me wrong, because there is a rising wave of xenophobic sentiment
Yeah.
lately. But I don't think he will ever become president of Ireland. But stranger things have happened in the world, so who am I to say that? He did everything else he said he was going to do. Do I think if maybe he hadn't have had all this trouble with the law and he hadn't have made himself out to be a bit drug addled,
Yeah.
maybe he might have actually been able to do it, if he wasn't punching old men in pubs and if he wasn't,
Being morally bankrupt, then there
yeah,
could
what I
be.
mean?
Yeah.
Maybe he might have been able to do it, but I just think people have seen his true colors, and the money and the fame have definitely exposed the person that he really is behind all of that. So no, I don't think he'll ever become president. I do think it's just a bit of a charade. I don't also think he'll ever fight again. So I don't know. Maybe he's just going to enjoy his money and ride off into the sunset. I think he should do.
You got to stay relevant somehow, right? And banging the pots and pans about a presidential campaign that won't happen is, I suppose, one way to do it. Probably
Right.
not my preferred method. You do bring up the point of his base, though, for the last however many months, anti-immigration, very akin to what we have going on in the States. Kind of feels like he's trying to appeal to that Western audience more so than anyone in Ireland. But with your, I would say, background, right? Do you see truth to it? Do you think it's maybe overblown in the sense of how immigration is impacting Ireland?
Um, I think that people, especially the working class in Ireland,
Hmm.
have been downtrodden. They have been robbed of their rights as citizens. Ireland's always been a very socialist country from its roots and its founders, in terms of the fact that, the right to housing, the right to education, the right to healthcare, very unlike America in that way. Um, in recent times, there has been a lot of corruption in terms of the TDs, so our parliament, basically, our parliament members in Ireland. I think 55 or 60% of them being landlords, and
Mm.
therefore a lot of corruption in the sense that they will refuse to build social housing, make the demand keep rising because obviously more people are coming into Ireland.
Yeah.
That's going to happen as your economy grows. Um, Obviously, the demand for housing then rises, especially in Dublin, where it's the main hub of where people go for work. Um, Less social housing being built, and then the demand going up, which means the price goes up, which means these landlords, these people that are in power that make these rules and these laws, therefore profit more. The issue then is that people that are at the bottom rung of the social economic ladder need a scapegoat to blame.
Mm.
And when you start looking around and you see more and more brown faces, more and more people in hijabs, more and more people that look different and you can clearly see are different to you, they're the people that get the blame for it. Because I remember in the early 2000s, it was the Polish, the Lithuanians, and the Latvians, and Estonians, and Romanians that were getting the blame when they were joined the EU and they were coming in. They're coming in, they're taking all our jobs, etc., etc. Now that has kind of moved out because they've had time to amalgamate themselves into society over the last 20 years. Now it's Muslims, it's people from Syria, people from Libya, but they're not being given the chance to, in 20 years amalgamate themselves into society.
Right.
So there will always be a scapegoat. I think that it's founded in the wrong view. I think rather than blaming the immigrants themselves, they should be blaming, billionaires that dodge however many millions in taxes every year. And they should be blaming the TDs that own these properties and leave them empty in order to push the price higher of rent. And, basically sell our country out to Facebook and Google and TikTok and these multinational companies that come in and use Ireland as a tax haven. Maybe they're the people that should be getting the blame, but I'm an MMA fighter. I punch people in the head and get punched in the head. I'm not gonna get too deep on that, but that's my view on it.
Folks, we're not done yet on today's episode. We still got a little bit more from our friend Denis Frimpong. Do not go anywhere here on the Combat Zone. Before we close out today's episode, we must, of course, send it back to today's guest. He is dominating our booth today. It's our friend, Denis the Menace Frimpong. I do want to close this interview with a topic I have to imagine you are beyond tired of talking about. There was a viral gym fight you took part in with Paddy Pimblett, and I'm just curious. Right, so many people probably ask how this happened, what went down. I would like to know, is there something you would have done different, either in the lead up to this or in that little squabble itself?
Yeah, so maybe I probably wouldn't have gone as hard on, obviously when I was on the Oktagon challenge, George Staines was on it and Jake McHugh were on it. And we did take the piss out of them a lot, to be honest. I was kind of the ringleader of that. And people don't understand, we're in that house for 3.5 weeks, and I was dieting the entire time, and I was sitting around 76 kilo. I normally get up to 85 kilos, so I'm dieting, staying around 76, being able to fight twice in 2 weeks. And on top of that, you're living in a house with people that you're going to be fighting. And on top of that, you got producers of the show going, "Come on, guys, we need you to make some
drama, yeah.
So make a show out of it. No Wi-Fi. We weren't allowed our phones. There was nothing to do in the house. So we just, you know what I mean? And yeah, I probably did cross some personal lines and some of the stuff I said. Obviously, it was a different time in my life, different place I was in my life in terms of having a family and stuff like that as well. I was a bit more unhinged back then. So yeah, I would have maybe not gone as hard in the paint as far as saying some of the stuff that I said, which probably would have led to not having that beef with Paddy in the first place. But it is what it is. What happened. We had it out now. I spent a lot of time in my last camp for Peter training in Next Gen with Paddy, sparring him. So everything's cool now, as far as I'm concerned. I think as far as he's concerned as well. And yeah,
Would you consider Paddy a friend these days then? Has this gone full circle?
I don't know about a friend, but yeah, cool. I'm sure he doesn't consider me a friend necessarily. We've trained a few times and we probably will train some more, and we're not enemies anymore. So I suppose compared to where we were in January, you could say that we've gotten friendlier, But I don't think I'm ever going to go to his house for tea or anything like that.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Combat Zone. Massive thank you to Denis Frimpong. I hope that kid gets what he wants, and I hope that this success continues because he could be a household name in the future. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern for more. I've been your host, Ben the Bane Davis. I will see you next week on the Combat Zone.